I could see where crypto was going. I could see how early we were. Whenever you're in an industry and the tech is intimidating to get involved with, if it takes some time to get educated on simply how to use something, that means you're really early and that the opportunity is massive. I could see that this was a completely new paradigm, and the fact that what Bitcoin represents is a new category or class of technology that had never existed previously. And it is the first time in human history where money was created by a non-government entity or king or queen or whatever it may be, right? The first time money was transparent, the first time it was built and launched anonymously, the first time it was it had a max, supply capacity, and it was completely decentralized and under the control of no one. That changes human history. And for people who recognize that, I think we continue to be validated in what we saw and what we continue to see. So Bitcoin, I like the fact that it's not efficient, and I like the fact that it is a store of value from a global perspective. With that being said, it is very limited in its use case, and now there are different projects that are adding a second layer like Lightning and other things to Bitcoin to make it more useful, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, it's digital gold. So Ethereum, now that it's a programmable digital asset, that opens the Pandora's box of the human imagination in an untold number of ways. And so I think it is just as valuable, if not more valuable, in many different ways, because it's going to be used in 10,000 different ways where Bitcoin's going to be used in one or two. And so I sold all of my Bitcoin in 2017 for Ethereum and altcoins. I think I own less than one Bitcoin today.
So what, when it comes to the altcoins and Ethereum, what would you say is your distribution between, maybe Ethereum and the others?
Ethereum's traditionally been 40-50%, and then the rest divided by, I've had up to 150 coins at one time. And I guess my investment strategy personally is a small amount of money divided by a large number of projects, because no one knows which projects are going to appreciate, do a 10, 20, 100x, 200x. So the only strategy I can think of is, okay, we're going to put $1,000 to $5,000 into 100 different projects, and if 2, 3, 4, 5 of those, do really well, then that makes up for all the rest and then some, and that has worked out. So that's how I found Chainlink, that's how I found Dematic, a penny, and that's how I found, Doge and Uniswap, and just all of these other projects that no one knew if they were going to turn into anything. And thankfully, those did. So
those are more of your speculative plays?
I think all of crypto outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum is speculative. And so how do you play a speculative market where you don't know the winners and you can't predict the future? You put a little bit amount of money on all of them to ensure that you win. And the nice part is, a lot of these projects will do a 50 to 100x, and again, that just wipes all the losses off the board, and you're good to go. What you end up wanting to do is identify the different narratives that are developing in the industry. The one in 2018 was DeFi. Summer of 2018, all about DeFi, right? And if you were paying attention to that and you put a little bit of money into a lot of the DeFi projects, then the winners rose to the top, and those were identified, whether it was Chainlink or Aave or Uniswap or Sushi or whatever it may be, and you did really well. Moving into the next cycle, what is the new segment that's going to be created or invented from a narrative standpoint? Who are the initial players in that pool? Put a little bit of money into all of those. Wait until the top projects are established to go all in on those, and that's at least how I'm playing the industry.
I think right now we're living through the largest adoption of technology that we will ever see in human history, right now. And we can all be a part of it, and we can all invest in it in the blockchain. I'm getting excited just talking about this. So I think anybody who's even looking at this space or watching content about this space is in an incredible space right now to invest in it. And I still think there's a lot of people that are still 5 years away from understanding that this will change everything in the world, everyone's life, and it's just so exciting. I was speaking with my mom the other night. She's 76 years old. She's in San Diego, California. She owns property. That's what she invested her money in, and that's how she makes an income. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks ago that she now owns Ethereum, because I sent her some on MetaMask, and I actually sent her some stablecoin. And when she heard about the stablecoin, she said, "Wow, it's just like $1." And I said, "Yeah, Mom, it's just like $1." And she said, "Wow, I can see this value." Again, she understands owning assets, and she understands the yield on those assets. And so for my mom, for example, if she understands she's taking on the risk of a blockchain, she also understands that you can potentially get that reward. And so if you go to a yield swapping platform, typically a decentralized exchange like Compound or Aave, you can now lend those coins with a smart contract, decentralized protocol, a piece of code basically, that allows you to get a yield back and that says you'll get your coins back. And that is a way that people can partake in these extra yields. I encourage everyone to take $10 or $20 and try these protocols, because not only is this potentially a good yield, but this is the future of money. This is you having a relationship with your money. And so, even if you lose the $10, the education alone that you'll get, and that education you can pass on to your children and grandchildren, it's invaluable. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. So that's the way people would engage with this. And again, the regulation is changing on a daily basis. And it's interesting to see what's going on with the regulation, and I've got my opinions about that as well.
Yeah, I think I saw an article about how banks were criticizing these stable coins and yield swaps, and I wonder why, right?
The stable coins, they really hit home at these banks. They are threatening the bread and butter of centralized banking institutions. Even if you go down to a basic retail savings bank on the corner, it's always curious how that space, can own that property, and they always have the beautiful lobbies and the beautiful technology. You are paying for that through your lack of return that you're getting on your investment. And so it's a big thing to be scared of for the central banks.
So, when someone puts their money into a stable coin, it's kind of analogous to a CD, right? A certificate of deposit, but the yield is just there.
Yeah, say for example, I have $100. I've got, for example, two options. I can put that $100 in my savings account at my local bank. I can buy a short-dated money market instrument where I lock that up for 90 days, which is like a CD where I get a slightly higher yield. Or I could swap it into USDT and put it on a platform like Aave and get potentially a 3 or a 4% yield return on that. It's economics, and right now, for the very first time, the consumer can see the value. And again, these platforms are decentralized, so there's no bank that can sit in the middle and take all of this spread. And again, say Aave isn't doing a very good job or Compound isn't doing another job, guess what? You got Pancake Swap and Sushi Swap and Dog Swap all trying to eat their lunch for them and providing you better rates and better returns and better technology. It's innovating at the speed of light right in front of our eyes. And there's nobody behind the curtain. There's nobody telling you that you're not smart enough to understand this. So that always means value for the consumer. Whenever, that's capitalism at its finest. And again, that's why Amazon was successful and Google was successful and Facebook was successful. And that's why I think ultimately these platforms will replace, their banking equivalents. So if you're going to engage with these markets, if you're going to allow your brain to start understanding these concepts and to get involved, well, you've started taking an active participation in your financial future, which means by definition now you're going to be making decisions about where your wealth goes, which means you have now become more of an investor and potentially a trader. And so I would say to everybody, decide right now, what do you want to do? I encourage people to first start by trying and experimenting with these instruments, because it's going to change your future regardless. The next thing I tell people to do is to try a strategy where they look at a very, very small number of instruments. I call it my 10 coin rule. So I don't think you can process it as a brain bandwidth more than 10 coins. That's probably too much for most people, less than 5. Yeah. And experiment with those for a while and try trading those once a month. Try putting those positions on once a month. Put your stop losses in, which means you already know your maximum downside. Put your profit-taking strategies in when you start. Don't allow yourself to make emotional decisions. And see how that goes for the 3 months or 6 months. And start to build your emotional character when it comes to being a trader. That's what I advise people to do. And so we're looking at something that we can all invest in. Again, it's very easy to get caught up in the market moves and the generational wealth you can create for yourself, which I think is great. But also, there's an amazing service to be done, and I think both can be done at the same time. Andrew Carnegie said, financial motive must prevail, and I do think you have to do both at the same time, and you can do both at the same time, and you should at the same time. So invest in these ecosystems, create generational wealth for yourself, and the same process, you're going to create all this incredible infrastructure for people around the world that's already making a difference. Imagine 10 years from now, you know, some of these places in Asia, West Africa, some of these places in South America, imagine those people with access to just a digital value storage, let alone lending and borrowing, let alone access to financial markets for investment. Imagine, it's going to make the world an incredible place.
I'm very, very convinced that crypto it's a lot bigger than money, right? It's going to underpin the really the infrastructure of all sorts of different applications. And so I think that this market is still very small. I think that there's a ton of room for growth. And if you look at you know, something like Bitcoin, a lot of people say, well, you know, Bitcoin might fail, the government might shut it down. It's all been tried before, right? And it's still here. And so if Bitcoin was going to fail, it was going to fail within its first 12 years of existence. But there's this idea called the Lindy effect, right? The Lindy effect is like the longer a technology is in existence, the more likely it is to survive. And so the fact that this Lindy effect has taken place, it's not slowing down. And so I think that, like, at the bottom line, it comes down to a lot of these concepts of, like, you know, Bitcoin was born in the midst of the financial crisis, right? It was coded in 2008. Very curious, right? Very curious timing. What happened in 2008? Well, the financial system collapsed because there wasn't a lot of transparency. And people didn't know where their risk really was and what would happen. The risk models just failed because of the data being siloed on all the different banks. Nobody knew. So with Bitcoin, if we all have a system where it's transparent, it's open, it's neutral, right? It doesn't have a bias towards one country or one bank. It's just a total neutral playing ground. This is what, you know, this is what I think central banks will settle their balance sheets with one another, right? It just makes that much sense. So by being able to buy a little bit of Bitcoin right now, you could kind of, you know, you could invest in that network growth, because you could see there's actually like a power law at effect. The more users that are on Bitcoin correlates to a higher price. And right now, you know, with between 100 and 200 million users of crypto entirely, you know, maybe 75 to 100 of those are in, you know, Bitcoin only. I would say that, you know, it's just like not going to stop. It's just going to be everywhere. It's pervasive, and it's a total revolution, man. It's a total revolution of money, of sovereignty. And by owning a crypto asset, it's kind of like owning digital real estate in a sense, I think. And one of the other things that just kind of came to my mind, but like when the dot-com bubble happened, like it was in, you know, 2000, 2001, right? And it was a phenomenal bubble, right? But it was mainly a Western phenomenon, okay? And when you adjust things for inflation, it topped out at about a $50 trillion market cap, okay? Western phenomenon. Now you look at crypto, and crypto again is at a $2 trillion market, but it's a global phenomenon, right? It's a global stock market, if you will. You know, loosely saying that, but hopefully people get it. But, you know, I think that, you know, you could make a great case that, you know, this sort of, you know, could go well beyond, you know, a 25x from here, which would be 50 trillion, where the dot-com bubble kind of collapsed after. This thing is, you know, could go up massively.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, really early in the game. You know, we hear people say, you know, between the early and the late 90s relative to the internet. So, you know, great time to just, you know, to be aware of this stuff and to be, you know, investing in it.
Yeah, there was a study, I forget the name of who conducted this study, but they showed basically the growth rate of internet users compared to crypto users, you know, basically saying like, okay, 1995 is equivalent to, you know, 2017, and then 1996 is equivalent to 2018. And they start to show that actually now the growth rate of crypto daily active users is now growing at a faster rate than the internet users were. So we're starting to hit that like inflection point, like that hockey stick sort of growth elbow curve thing right there. And so yeah, again, like super exciting time.
So let's talk about, you know, the DeFi ecosystem. So a huge chunk of that is on Ethereum.
Yes.
Right. So what's your strategy around, like, you know, keeping that? Is that like your stable base asset, and then what's your portfolio kind of breakdown percentage wise between maybe Ethereum and other?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, you know, the part of the market cycle that we're in right now, Ethereum is best of breed, right? It's got like over 1 million open source developers. So it is the largest open source community in the world, period. It's larger than Linux, which a lot of people didn't know. And so Ethereum has the most active developer community, and guess where the value is? Where people are creating things. And so, you know, a lot of people want to get smart and say, oh, I'm going to be the next Ethereum killer, right? But Ethereum has worked pretty well, and it's shown a lot of resilience. And I think we're actually, you know, if you look at the ETH BTC chart, right, we've reversed a downtrend. We've been in a downtrend of Ethereum in terms of Bitcoin since June of 2017, where you know, kind of Ethereum was at like $300. And ever since then, that cross ratio basically has declined. And so now we're back on the upswing. So Ethereum has more strength relative to Bitcoin. And so I think also, you know, a lot of the funds are looking at Ethereum as like, okay, well, we kind of, you know, maybe feel like we missed the tide on Bitcoin, but Ethereum's still, you know, a $400 billion asset. So it's, you know, it's small enough that we could still get in, we could kind of bully price around. And I think, you know, the larger funds are looking at Ethereum as like, wow, that's where a lot of the development activity is. I get really hyped up about DeFi just because, you know, I think that's where most of the upside is going to be in the market. And because what DeFi applications actually are as well, they're not like generally their own blockchain, right? So like, they're not like, you know, Bitcoin is its own blockchain, Ethereum is its own blockchain, Cardano is its own blockchain, but then they have applications on top of them, which kind of are like, in a sense, are, you know, pseudo equities in a sense. They have like, you know, cash flows basically attached to them. Like for instance, MakerDAO, which is an asset that, you know, we're long, Tower 18, we're long. I personally love MakerDAO. But, you know, they burn, you know, basically they buy tokens off the market, and they burn it, the protocol does, based on interest from their stablecoin. And so I think that like the more that you see these protocols that are just running themselves, then you start to realize, wow, that's where a lot of the power is.
What are some of the differences that you see between trading stocks and trading crypto?
The freedom to control your own money, like, and the 24/7 access and availability, like that's good and bad. Some people get very addicted to trading because they're like, I can do it at 3 a.m. and they wake up and they're just trading 24/7, right? Yeah. Kind of like a video game mindset, which because of the generations that we're evolving right now, the Merrill Lynch's and the Edward Jones should be very scared of what's happening. Yeah. Because more and more people are learning that they can do it on them by themselves and for themselves, make way better returns, and they don't have to contact their broker to make any type of transaction, right? Yeah. So you have the freedom and flexibility to do pretty much whatever you want on the trading side. Yeah. Compared to on the stock side, you have all these limits and regulations about how you can trade, what you can trade, hold periods, like all these like terms that people then have to go learn, and all these rules that you have to play the game by. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like I had a very wise guy once tell me, like, the transactions on the stock market and how fast supercomputers make them compared to retail traders. Exactly. And I know that you probably have heard the same thing, but it's like A retail trader on average, like that transaction might take 5 to 6 seconds for it to actually fully execute. How fast is a hedge fund and their supercomputer moving compared to that? Right? Milliseconds a trade. The average trade of a hedge fund is like 10 milliseconds. How many times have they already traded back and forth before your one trade even goes through? Right? It doesn't, like, it's not even fair.
It's not. And you factor that in. Not only is the network, the physical infrastructure biased to help them succeed and off of our transactions, but the tools that institutional traders can have that us little guys can't.
Right.
I mean, within crypto, can you talk about maybe some of the tools that are available to retail investors?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I feel like it's more fair on the crypto side because it's pretty much the same tools that everybody's using. Some of the biggest hedge funds are still using the same tools as a retail trader because that's what's available. Yeah. And that's the power of blockchain and crypto is it's meant to be a peer-to-peer based regulated style technology, right? Mm-hmm. If one person has different tools than somebody else, like that's not a true like equal, right? Yeah. So like they could do things differently if they wanted to, which like on the stock side they do. Yeah. On the crypto side, you have a lot of the same scanners and tools and trading platforms and wallets. And some of these wallets, like you got to be careful and do your research before picking a wallet and all this stuff. But like it's the same funds that are jumping into crypto right now are setting up the same wallets as I could go set up right now. Yeah. Right? So it's fair for everybody. Exactly. So like some of that technology and system wise, like once you start to understand like the core components of setting up a wallet and converting it over and like just moving funds around, like it's kind of the same thing that even a fund has to do, and they're using the same tools that you are. Yeah. So it's fair.
I think if people understood how stacked the stock exchanges are against them, well, who knows what they would do, but I'd be angry. Right. I was angry.
Yeah. It's no same here. And I mean, I had good results in stocks, but like I said, I've converted over to pushing mostly crypto investments now because like it really is more free. Like you have more freedom to do just about anything you want. And I think that's what most retail traders want. And that's another difference back to the stock market, right? Yeah. Stock market's super regulated. Yeah. You know, like if you have an asset that you invest into and it goes to zero overnight, like the SEC is going to come knocking on your behalf. You know, there's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be all this stuff. There's specific government entities that basically make sure that stuff doesn't happen. And you have the accredited investors out there. You have all these like status levels to make sure that scams don't happen. Right? Crypto world, not so much. Like I said earlier, it's a peer-to-peer based network where that's why it was built to be the way it is. It's fully transparent for a reason. Yeah. If I want to go look at every single ledger transaction going into a wallet, I can. Yeah, exactly. You know, so like it's more peer-to-peer based on that side. So like it does help keep some of the scams and frauds at bay, but at the same time, like it's the wild, wild west right now because there really isn't like a government body overseeing all that stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ignorance, like just it's so new. People don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And so, you know,
I mean, I had one lady say that she didn't want to invest into Bitcoin because she didn't have 50 grand to put on a token. Right. And I was like, see, there's so many misconceptions and myths around it because like you don't have to have that much money to get started. You can have fractional assets, right? If I have $50 in the stock market, what am I going to buy? Like you can't buy a share of Tesla at $1,000. You can't buy this or all these things, right? Like because that's fractional assets. Yeah. Crypto, I can step over and say, well, okay, I'm going to buy $50 worth of Bitcoin. And that might be 0.0000000 how many ever zeros out there, depending on when you're buying. Yeah. But it still allows you to buy Bitcoin. There's so many like just myths because people don't know, and that's why like I love what Uncensored Crypto is doing to expand the knowledge of everything cryptocurrency, blockchain related, because overall people don't know what they don't know, and people won't invest into things they don't know and trust, right? And right now we're sitting at a $2 trillion market cap, right? That's a fifth of what gold's at. Gold's up $9 to $10 trillion, right? So when people start to look at the adoption cycle of cryptocurrency, we're still like in the early ages, right? So the other myth is like people are just out there saying, I'm too late, right? Like this fad's over. Yeah. And I'm just like, I skipped out on it in 2009, right? And like I've been sitting here over a decade later, and I'm still early to the show.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, there's so many myths around it. I'm too late. It's just a fad. Like, I have to have so much money to get started. It's like, all these are just myths, and it's because there's a lack of knowledge on like the true like benefits to the technology, to the coin, and actually how to actually make it work for you.
What is it that is exciting to you about Ethereum and Cardano and those types of projects?
Yeah, you know, I've done my research, but I haven't done as much as some other people. My brother's super into Ethereum. That's like, he's like all in on Ethereum. So we always kind of like banter back and forth about why I believe more money should be in other projects. And he's like, no, it all needs to be in like Ethereum and Alchemix and some of these other projects. And so it's always fun to have those banters. It's kind of like if you watch the TV show Shark Tank, all of the sharks are successful, but they don't always necessarily agree with each other on certain investment strategies or whatever. And so, you know, for me, I think Ethereum's great for obvious reasons. You know, it's what so many other companies and projects are being built on top of. And so, you know, Ethereum obviously is the second largest project right now in the crypto space. It's done an amazing job. It usually historically will outperform Bitcoin, meaning like in 2020, you know, Bitcoin was up like 400%, but Ethereum was up like 1100% or something. And so it was one of those things where I was like, oh, had I put all my Bitcoin onto Ethereum, I'd have that many more millions of dollars. I'm so stupid. And so it's that fun. You can always go back and forth and back and forth. So I think Bitcoin is the safe bet because of the reasons that it's decentralized. There's never going to be more, and it's just a great store of value by my definition. Like the way Michael Saylor explains it, right? Is it's the best place to put your money, to have your net worth in. And I believe that it's the best digital property to hold. Ethereum I look at differently. Ethereum I look at almost like investing into a FANG stock. I look at Bitcoin almost like better property, better gold, better real estate, better cash. It's just like if I'm going to store my money in real estate, gold, or cash, and I do, by the way, I have all of that. I think Bitcoin's a better alternative, because when I think, oh, how am I going to, if something goes down or I need to go somewhere, like I got to sell my home, I got to sell my gold, my cash. It's like, it's not as convenient as carrying like a thumb drive with all my Bitcoin on it. So I think for those reasons, Bitcoin's the better property. But Ethereum, I look at like a FANG stock, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, any of those top companies. I look at Ethereum like that, where it's like there's a company, there's people, there's a lot of other things that are being built on top of it, and their success relies on it. And so, you know, obviously I think Ethereum's amazing, and that's why I have a good chunk of my portfolio in it. But I also believe in projects, you know, I could go through the gambit of list that I have, but I also believe in like Cardano and a bunch of other big projects that I think down the road are going to have huge upside. So I think over here at the end, there's going to be this massive shift to decentralized technology, companies, projects, banking, finance, loans, etc. And I think somewhere, regardless of what happens in the chaos, we are going to end up over here. And that gap between where we are and where I believe inside 100%, and I back it with my money, where we're going, is a life-altering wealth transfer. There's going to be a lot of people who are unfortunately negatively affected by the change in times, and there's going to be a lot of people who are just everyday regular people, and they're able to get generational wealth. They're able to make millions to tens of millions or more in a very short window of time that historically would have been almost impossible to do. But we've been given this opportunity. If people can be educated on how to best, like the hockey player, go where the puck is headed. If y'all watch this whole thing, which you should, and you go where the puck is headed, you have a chance to create generational wealth. You have a chance to have financial freedom and time freedom. And that's why I'm honored to be part of this in some small way, to be able to help out.
The thing that was really, that made me so passionate about cryptocurrencies and really wanted me, I wanted to be an evangelist for cryptocurrencies because of the potential that I saw with it helping in one particular area. And then of course that area is now translated to many other areas in the same kind of manner. But half of the world right now is either unbanked or underbanked, right? So you and I, we deposit money into our Chase or our Wells Fargo or whatever, and that money sits there, and we consider it pretty safe. I mean, it's there. We can make transactions. We can go to the grocery store. Or we can buy something on Amazon or whatever it is. But you have to understand that over 2 trillion people in the world don't have that luxury, and it's because banking is expensive. And so the potential that I saw with cryptocurrency right out of the gate was the impact that it could have on people around the world to be able to get wealth into people's hands. Because if you don't have a bank account, you can't invest money, you can't potentially buy things that could go up in value, and therefore wealth will never come to you. And so I think in order for us to see what we call this transfer of wealth, or what other people call wanting to essentially share the wealth with everybody, I think crypto actually gives people the opportunity within a free market environment. Right. And to me, that's a very powerful thing. When you can have a free market where people can buy a cryptocurrency and actually use it to go buy something else or to pay for something, whether it's a barter system or not, right? That's what we've had with money since way before we had dollars and cents and all of that. And so to me, that was one of the really big places that I saw the potential for cryptocurrency. And so one of the first investments I actually made was in a blockchain called Stellar Lumens. I invested when Stellar was like at 2 cents. And because they really are focused on that. They're focused on bringing essentially banking to the unbanked, cross-border transactions. And I think that's very important in the world that we live in today, is giving people access, right? Yeah. And so giving people access to what they wouldn't have before. I think even today, the day that we're living in, the internet is going to change because, again, if people don't have access to the internet, how can they do any of this stuff, right? So now you have mobile phones, obviously, that are giving people access to the internet. So really, anybody who has a mobile phone, which even many third world countries, people have mobile phones, and they have access to the internet. And I think this is where the power of cryptocurrency lies. They may not be able to go and open a Chase, JP Morgan Chase, or a Wells Fargo account, but they can get cryptocurrency. They can then use that cryptocurrency to either save some of their money, so it's not hidden under a mattress, and they don't have to worry about, the government, having these crazy monetary policies and massive inflation taking hold of their money, essentially, where buying a loaf of bread might cost $5,000, or $10,000. And it's really a hedge, in my view.
Yeah, and something that, they never had, they didn't have any options for this.
No options, zero.
Yeah. So that's very near and dear to my heart as well. One of the reasons I wanted to share what's happening out there, because even now, there's a huge chunk of the developed world that doesn't understand this is a problem.
Sure.
And then even if they do understand that this is a problem, they don't understand that this is a legitimate solution that doesn't involve, socialism or communism.
Yeah, exactly.
Men with guns forcing you to give your wealth to someone else.
That's true. And I will say, even in developed countries, I think, and I'd have to go back and look at this stat, we can fact check this later, but the last that I looked, even in the United States of America, which we would consider, a very developed country, the leader of the free world, so to speak, 30% of people are unbanked or underbanked in the United States of America. Wow. So you're talking about a problem that doesn't just exist in a third world country. This is a problem that exists right here in America, where we're sitting today, where you'd think that people have access to some of the greatest things, in the history of our modern world, and yet some people, many people, still are unbanked or underbanked in the United States and in many other developing countries as well. So this is a global problem. It touches everybody. And I think that cryptocurrency definitely can help solve that problem. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all, but I definitely think that it can give people the opportunities that the current system doesn't provide them.
As far as some of these types of technologies and the things they're doing to do good, how does a Main Street investor participate in that? How do they accelerate that?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's 3 ways you can really invest in cryptocurrencies. I mean, you have the first way, which is, you look at buying and holding kind of like the blue chip cryptocurrencies, right? So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Stellar Lumens, and others, Ripple, and so on and so forth. You know, all of these others that most people probably already know about, right? So you can buy and hold. You can use a dollar cost averaging system, right? And put money into Bitcoin. I always tell people, look, I mean, you should just own some Bitcoin, you know, and you should just hold on to it. Hold on to it forever, really. People thought I was crazy when I said Bitcoin would go to 20,000 and when it would go to 30,000 and 40,000. And I know there's some astronomical claims out there about Bitcoin going to 500,000 or $1 million per coin, per token. That's very feasible because once you understand the limited supply, you understand demand and supply, it's feasible that it could go to those levels. And so even if somebody owned a Satoshi at $1 million, which is a Satoshi is the smallest increment in a Bitcoin, it's 9 decimal places. And this is the difference between crypto, and I'm going to keep going on the you know, the investment part, but this is the difference between crypto and fiat. You know, you can break down $1 into 100 pennies. You can break down 1 Bitcoin into 9 decimal places. So people always say, well, Bitcoin is $42,000 now, or when it was 63,000, they were like, well, who could own a Bitcoin? Or, you know, you can own a piece of a Bitcoin. Right. You don't have to own the whole thing at once. I mean, Solana, I think is a great project, and I think there's a lot of great decentralized apps there's actually a lot of opportunity on the decentralized apps being built on Solana right now. I wouldn't say that it's the Ethereum killer, but I think you can find like gems of coins to either trade or buy into if you want a long-term investment on them as well. I think there's some coins you can find that are trading on Solana, you know, that are the decentralized applications on Solana, built on the Solana protocol.
Well, it's interesting because it's different. So a lot of people just they don't understand any of it, and they're too scared to ask, right? So they sort of want to know, but then they sort of don't. So if I just tell them, then it's easier, and you just start from the beginning. Yeah. So that's a good one. And then a lot of people, they don't. I've noticed that they don't want to know all the details. They just want to know how they can use it and what they can get out of it. It's quite transactional. Yeah. And then of course there's like the really excited ones that have been in the industry for a while, and then they're very engaged. You know, they really want to know like how it's making a difference and things like that. So another thing that I love is gaming, right? Yeah. Because it's one of the easiest ways that I've been able to, you know, have a use case sort of to explain to them how they could really, I don't know, change the way they think about money, you know, like play to earn games is so amazing. And, you know, I think the way people thought about work before was so different to now, because now, you know, well, I'll use the Philippines as an example. Throughout the pandemic, you know, obviously there was so much poverty like running through the Philippines, which is terrible. But a lot of people were using play to earn games like Axie Infinity to actually feed their families, which is amazing, right? Like they don't have a job, but that's okay because they can play crypto games. Like it's so cool. And so I love that. And I found that really a useful way to explain how, money, like the way you can think about money is different, and you can earn crypto by playing games. So cool.
Yeah. So can you maybe expand on what play to earn means, just for our audience who may not be familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll use Axie Infinity as an example. So it's a little bit like, okay, Pokemon in the past, right? So most people are quite familiar with that. You know, you get your little Pokemons, and you can, you know, battle other Pokemons or trade them, or we've all used Pokemon cards, right? But so Axie Infinity is similar. Like you get little Axies, and you can breed with them, you can trade them, you can like battle other Axies, and you're actually earning crypto while you play these games. And so you're earning SLP, which is their native crypto. Yeah, exactly. And you use the SLP in the game to breed or do different things with your Axies. Yeah, exactly. But you can also trade SLP or convert SLP on an actual exchange. So you could convert it to Bitcoin or fiat or trade it with USDT, whatever you want to do. So it's really cool, and I think it's a really great way to get into crypto. For two reasons. One, it's a bit of an investment because you need to use Ethereum to actually buy your Axies. Okay. So that's for starters. So say when I first started, I think I bought my Axie for $200 US dollars. And now, because of the price of Ethereum has gone up, it's now worth like $2,000 US or something like that.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So it's a bit of an investment in the starters, and it sort of gives you a bit of a feel on how to use Ethereum and the different like ways you can use, you know, blockchains like that. And then it also can give you access to SLP, which you can then learn about trading and different things like that. So I think it's a great way to really get immersed into the industry in a sort of safe and fun way.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that a lot of, you know, your more enthusiastic audience, more experienced audience wants to know what kind of impact a project can have. I'm curious if you would talk to us about maybe some of the ways that you've seen crypto projects have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, well, so one of them was in the Philippines, which I love that example.
Yeah, that was good.
So there are ones like that. I think there's so many new projects coming out that are really cool. You know, and it shows a lot of different ways that, I guess it depends on what their interest is, I suppose, because I think crypto is solving problems all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like with payment systems and, you know, and just like security is really cool. And so I get a lot of questions, you know, of just, I guess it's people who are a bit, not skeptical, but they're like, okay, I get the idea of it. I get why this technology is interesting, but you know, what are like sort of the more intricate details? Like, is it safe? Like, is it better to use a wallet, or is it better to keep my money on an exchange, or different things like that? And so I like to, you know, try and explain the difference between like, well, if you want to trade, then you keep it on an exchange. If you want to keep it safe, you can put it in a ledger. And like, I guess it depends on what they need and what they want. And so I kind of try and interact with my followers enough to really help them so that they're all probably learning from each other.
Yeah.
It's a roundabout way of explaining it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Any kind of like buyer beware, user beware thoughts that you know, people should be aware, you know, thinking about whenever they're getting into crypto? Yeah,
absolutely. You know, and there are a few things you need to keep in mind. You know, gas fees is always one that's been talked about. So you just have to make sure that you research, but that is again getting much better.
Yeah.
So there's different ways to send your money than just using Ethereum that'll cost you a third of what you're sending.
Right.
Well, that's not a real number, but you know what I mean. And yeah, so gas fees is an important one. And just like make sure that whatever you're buying, you have actually looked into. Yeah. You know, because there are a lot of talking, Doge, Shiba, buy all these altcoins, but if you don't take a minute and actually read what they're doing, then you could end up, you know, just buying into a pump and dump kind of scheme, and then, you know, you could get burnt. So do a little bit of research before you jump in, find a credible source that you trust, and yeah, but there are definitely ones out there. So it's a lot easier than a few years ago.
Yeah. So you mentioned Dogecoin and
Yes.
Shiba Inu. I think, and so wonder what your thoughts are on meme coins. Are they what do you think?
I think, you know, if you're an experienced trader, I think they're fabulous because you can make quite a lot of money off them, right? If you sort of know what you're doing. But I think it's a very interesting industry because the regulations aren't quite in place, right? So people can just pump and dump. You know, you can put $2 million into it, boost it by X amount, and then you make a fortune, but you've made a lot of other people lose as well. So you have to know a little bit what you're doing. So the meme coins, it's very interesting because you just need one influencer like Elon Musk to totally change the perception of it, right, in everybody's eyes. But I think if you're going for a longer term, actual legit investment for yourself, I think you should just check in on what you're buying, you know, because they are easy to manipulate.
Yeah. So for traders and taking advantage of the volatility, good opportunity.
Yeah.
Not something for hodling.
Well, that's right. And I think the percentage is 80%, because it is so accessible, there is, you know, this other side of it. So I think 80% of traders actually lose their money because they're inexperienced. And, you know, in the past, like you had to be a broker to actually trade things like this, whereas now it's like any random person could do it. So I think just make sure you're careful with what you're doing, because 80% is quite a big number of people that get burnt.
So, you know, you've gotten into Bitcoin, you've come across Ethereum, and then you kind of see the future with Ripple and the use cases. At what point did you start to diversify into some of the smaller altcoins?
Yeah, so I think that probably started late last year, sort of after the first beginning of this bull run that we just went through. At that point, I started to follow some people on the internet, hear what people were saying, and hear about these up and coming projects. And at the same time, there was, a lot of these ICOs, these initial coin offerings that were popping up this year, and I started to learn where to find those things and read about those projects. And so I started to diversify into those pretty much, at the end of this fall or spring, excuse me. And, I've really focused on ecosystems. I'm trying to avoid the one-off projects. There's a lot of, excuse my, language, but trash in the ecosystem out there. And so you really have to do the proper vetting. You have to understand, who is the leadership behind the project? What other projects have they been a part of? Who's funding it? Is Coinbase behind it? Is a Binance Ventures group behind it? Things like that.
So now I want to circle back to something you touched on at looking at where the investment is coming in from. So you mentioned is Coinbase behind it, is Binance Ventures behind it. What do you look for with regards to that?
So primarily I'm trying to understand, the investment group behind the project, right? What other projects have they been a part of? Have they been successful? But, also on the flip side of that, have they been part of a project that has, as they say in the community, had a rug pull, right? Where they've taken money from the investors. So looking for red flags, but also looking for the wins from the team.
Okay, so on one hand, you're looking to follow the smart money, right? And then on the other hand, you're looking to avoid the bad actors. So you mentioned a rug pull. Would you talk about what that means?
Yeah, so essentially what it means is that sometimes you'll see these new projects pop up, and they'll try and attract a lot of new investors during that ICO phase, and a lot of people get very excited and they pour money in without thinking. And then later on, the team behind the project can use some technical features and other things to essentially flood the market with coin, right? They can all artificially inflate the supply, or they can dump all the tokens on the market at once. And it kind of just kills the market, and it makes it illiquid so that the normal investor like myself I can't sell my coins anymore. There's no market to sell them to. And so that's where they say you're having the rug pulled out from under you because you have no recourse, and you're out all your money.
I hate to hear those stories. There's a lot of really ethical people in the space, but there's a lot of unethical players as well. So, you've talked about, smart contracts. You talked about Ethereum, Cardano, Solano. I think we mentioned Polkadot. Have you started to move out from those ecosystem or blockchain plays?
I have, in some cases I have invested in sort of one-off smaller projects that, in my view is a very small market cap compared to the rest of the crypto space. So they are kind of, planting seeds at this point, but who knows what's going to come of it.
So you're hunting for those hidden gems. What do you look for whenever you're looking for one of them?
Yeah, so I look for the underlying technology, and what problem is it solving in the market, right? So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for which ecosystem it's tied to, right? So it could be part of the Ethereum system, it could be Solana or Cardano. And then I'm looking for the team behind the project. So, especially the developers, have they worked on other projects that have been successful? Have they been able to deploy code on a timely basis, right? Have they had audits approved by other third-party companies? So things like that.
Excellent. So you actually look at the development team and their ability to hit deadlines.
Yeah, it's very common in the crypto space for everyone to set a deadline and say where a platform is going live, or, whatever deliverable may be. And it's more often than not, I think everyone's late to deliver those items in the crypto space. And so it's kind of something that we've all come to expect as part of the way it goes. But so I do look for that.
And so when you're talking about these deadlines, is that where the roadmap comes in?
Yeah, so, I think, yes, one, the roadmap is where they communicate that timeline, but also I think a lot of these projects now have migrated to things like the Telegram app, where they're communicating in more real time. So I find that, you know, with the real projects, you're going to see a pretty active Telegram channel, and they're going to be, they might have a separate like conversation channel and then an announcement channel, and that's where all the big information sits.
Interesting. So they're communicating directly with the community via Telegram. And just to recap, what you look for is an active conversation amongst the user base, as well as, you know, good communication, one-way communication from the project to the community.
That's correct. So yeah, you want to make sure that they're engaged with the audience and they're answering any questions. We may have a lot of time in those channels. You see a lot of people have fear and doubt about the project. You know, they're really there to try and alleviate those concerns. Another function that you see in these Telegram channels and across the crypto space in general is these things called AMAs, which is Ask Me Anything. And it's these open forum interviews or questions, right? So the leadership of a team may say, we're going to do an Ask Me Anything event on this day and time. And then everyone in the Telegram can ask questions openly and they address them one by one. So, you know, I think it's just a great way to create transparency in the community.
What other sort of like, you know, outside of management team and the value proposition and the problem it solves, what are some of the other maybe sentiment or, you know, user base activities, some of these more intangible things that you look for?
Sure. So I try and sort of see if there's a conversation happening on Twitter that's, you know, and see what the different voices that be are saying. I also look to see where the coin is traded. So very often, especially with smaller projects, they start off on what are called decentralized exchanges, such as Uniswap, where you kind of have to be a crypto pro to know how to get there. And, you know, with these small projects, the name of the game is you start off on a small exchange like Uniswap, and then hopefully as you grow, you engage these larger exchanges and you get listed there, so Coinbase or a Binance. But I'm typically looking to see if there's enough users in the Telegram channel, how much daily volume is trading on a daily basis, right, within the coin, and then looking for unusual activity or large buys. Sometimes you can see, you know, one user, because all this blockchain information is open source, you can see someone make large purchases, and that kind of tips you off to things at times before large movements happen.
What are some of the sources that you go to discover new ideas?
Sure. So there's a couple Telegram channels that I follow. You want me to name them here? I'm
If
happy
you're comfortable
to.
doing
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So there's one person in particular. His name is Infinity Gains with a Z at the end. It's a very large group. There's about 40,000 people there. A lot of people promoting bad projects, but the leader of the group himself, you know, puts out a couple things every now and then. And, you know, through my short experience, I found him to be relatively trustworthy. And so that's been good. You know, from a technical perspective, I think there's a gentleman on YouTube named Chico Crypto who does a really good job following the technical aspects of projects. You know, BitBoy Crypto is another one that I keep an eye on. I think he, you know, has a large following. He's very much focused on the larger projects. He's not really into the small altcoin stuff. Yeah, I think those are sort of like the three like pundits I would say that I listen to.
Hedera does have a cryptocurrency. It's called HBAR, HBAR. And the currency is there for a couple of reasons. It's needed for the function of the network. It's a true utility token in the sense that developers that want to use the network, when they make the API calls for their applications, they have to pay for those API calls with our cryptocurrency HBAR. There's a fixed supply of HBAR, 50 billion tokens. There will never be another token minted. It's not inflationary, either inflationary or deflationary, either one. It's fixed supply, and the tokens have to be used for the function.
You know, since Bitcoin is the standard, I've invested in Bitcoin, and over time, a dollar cost average with Bitcoin. So that's been, again, is it the most functional? I don't know, but it's the most popular, and I think it's the one that people are going to build off of. If you're looking at newer ones, you know, Cardano, for example, is one of the newer ones. Or it's been around a while, but the functionality of it and the capability of it is something newer. I don't want to speak negatively, but like a Dogecoin, I don't know what I would do with that. So Cardano actually has some capabilities.
I love Chainlink. it's, you know, a little bit of a hack at a particular problem, but the Oracle problem, which is how do you take something happening in the real world and translate it into something happening on the blockchain, is a universal requirement for, you know, so many things. And Chainlink has got a very elegant solution to that problem, and I think that that's likely to grow a lot. I love that use case. You kind of need it. There are a bunch of platform tokens, and you know, that's, you're talking about Ethereum, you're talking Tezos, Cardano, Solana, all of those kind of level 1 platforms, and that is the infrastructure. It's kind of the fat pipe, if you will.
And so Ethereum creates this opportunity to automate and transition all of these types of services that have been done in traditional ways, like traditional finance. You can now build them on Ethereum with decentralized applications. And so the coin associated with Ethereum, Ether or ETH, now the value of that coin is not just monetary value. It now reflects all the applications that are being built on Ethereum. And so as those applications grow, as users of those applications grow, ETH will increase in value. And so part of what I think is so important for people to understand is it's not just guessing whether the value of a given crypto is going to go up or down. Now you can actually look at what's being created. Is it being used? And if you think it has potential, then you want to own that coin because the value is going to rise with it.
For our viewers at home, like who want to make some money off by investing in the space, perhaps, what is the path that they could take?
So there are a lot of paths you can take. There are a lot of investment vehicles. You can invest Grayscale Bitcoin Trust if you want to use fiat and put it into. There's any of the exchanges to on-ramp. What I would say is I don't trade with Bitcoin. It is very much like it is my savings account. I don't try and time the markets. Like I went through this. I think everyone goes through this, where when they first discover this asset that has these amazing price swings and price action, like there's a lot of professional traders are good at kind of picking the right entry and exit points, and you can make a lot of money. When I try and do it, I always end up with less Bitcoin, always. And so I've just stopped. I just dollar cost average. I buy a chunk of Bitcoin every single day. It happens automatically. I don't think about it. You know, one of the benefits of working for a Bitcoin mining company is I get paid. You know, a portion of my compensation is in Bitcoin. You know, there's a lot of ways to make money in Bitcoin.
If you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. I hope you're even more excited about the world premiere of episode 1 of Uncensored Crypto coming up on January 18th. See, that was the tiniest of nibbles of what's to come. If you know anyone who'd like to watch this series for free, send them over to uncensoredcrypto.com, where anyone can sign up to watch for free during the world premiere event. During the event, we'll be opening up each episode for free viewing and giving away over $10,000 in crypto and prizes to people who participate in the fun and games. We didn't even scratch the surface of what crypto is really all about here today, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. I'll see you again in episode 1.